conviction, humility, compassion, perseverance, courage, hope, wisdom, love. In an age where morally upright heroes seem to be disappearing from our screens, I am thrilled to inform you that they are not completely gone. They may be a rare breed, but that only makes it all the more special when you stumble across a character who embodies this noble archetype. Finally, we have another hero whose story can inspire and edify young men across the globe, whose example of selflessness, dedication, and a multitude of other virtues will provoke within us the desire to imitate his goodness. Did this hero come from Hollywood, from a best-selling author, from an award-winning TV series? Nope. Instead, he can be found in a French AA video game made by a few dozen people, many of whom used to work at Ubisoft. To paraphrase Ratatouille, not everyone can become a great hero, but a great hero can come from anywhere. What is it about this Gustave, the protagonist of Clair Obscur Expedition 33, that is so wonderful? Why is he a shining example of heroic masculinity? What is masculinity anyway? Great questions. Let's begin with the last. I find that rather than attempting to assign a strict definition to masculinity, it is better to think about how we might become masculine. The answer is simple: strive to be virtuous. Oddly enough, this would also be the answer should women ask how they can be properly feminine. There is not a single virtue exclusive to either gender, which is why the example of Gustave or Aragorn or Iroh is inspiring to both men and women, while the character arcs of Katara, Éowyn, or Expedition 33's Lune find a ready place in the hearts of men. That's not to say that the genders are the same, far from it. How men and women manifest these virtues is markedly different. The loyalty of a son to his mother is quite unlike his loyalty to his father, just as the ways in which his parents teach, guide, and discipline him will differ. The wisdom of a wise queen and that of a great general are different but complementary. The sexes are not interchangeable, but absolutely must be united in their common struggle to grow in virtue. Seek to be good, and you will become a great man. With that thought in mind, let us examine Gustave's virtues and how they shape him into a hero whose example of authentic masculinity is desperately needed today. No man has ever become an inspirational figure through complacency, doubt, or half-heartedness. The worst thing a fictional character could be is milquetoast, lukewarm, and boring. We don't follow leaders, not of our own volition anyway, who lack vision, who are unsure of themselves, who tread lightly and cautiously instead of charging forward. Gustave is not such a man. He is focused, driven, dedicated to completing his expedition's task: destroy the Paintress and save their people.
And soon, we'll get to do a lot more than throw rocks.
This conviction of his is emphasized several times throughout the game's prologue, as Gustave confronts doubters, skeptics, and even a worshipper of the Paintress. In all those conversations, he never falters or shows a hint of doubt, but all the while remains calm, kind, and respectful toward those with whom he argues. This tells us not only that Gustave is confident in the nobility of his mission, but also that he understands its true purpose. This is important. A man must have conviction, must have a purpose which he pursues unwaveringly, but must never forget the people whom he serves by achieving that goal. Now, a character can absolutely begin his arc without a firm conviction or purpose. Bilbo Baggins in The Hobbit is an excellent example. He starts out carefree, lackadaisical even, living a pleasant and comfortable life until adventure is thrust upon him, and at the age of 50 he is forced to grow a backbone and discovers numerous virtues he never knew he possessed, because he didn't, as his purpose and conviction solidify. Bilbo, before Gandalf left that mark on his door, was, for all intents and purposes, a child. He returns to Hobbiton, a man. A small one, but a man nonetheless. Much love to the short kings out there. Gustave, by contrast, begins with a well-established purpose. It is his love for the people of Lumiere that urges him to spend the final year of his altogether too short life fighting a battle that thousands before him have fought and lost. But our hero doesn't look at the history of the expeditions and see failure. He sees inspiration. He sees a legacy left by countless courageous men and women who shared his conviction.
You know they gave their lives to lay the trail for us, right?
This is where a man ought to start. He should know what he believes in, what he is willing to work, fight, sacrifice, and die for. And he must know his own role in the pursuit of his chosen goal. As you may have heard me say many times before, humility is not synonymous with self-deprecation. It is instead more accurately defined as possessing true knowledge about oneself and one's place in the world. The humble man, then, will not have to worry about who he is, will not have to think about himself, but instead will be free to think about the needs of others. That is Gustave to a T. I could point to his refusal to take credit for the team's strength as an example of his humility.
We have a really good team, thanks to you. That's our edge.
And while it certainly is, we should focus more on Gustave's appreciation for the skills and talents of his fellow expeditioners than we should on him downplaying his own achievements. A better example of Gustave's humility comes after the expedition arrives on the continent, events transpire, and Gustave sits down with Lune for a fireside chat.
We can't bring anyone back. But I thought we can keep their spirit alive by pushing forward.
No part of Gustave views this undertaking as glorious. He has no desire to win praise and fame, despite the open admiration of numerous citizens of Lumiere, including his own apprentices.
They'll definitely want that for the museum. The complete record of the expedition that destroyed the Paintress.
The man just wants to honor the memory of the fallen and give future generations a chance at life. This is true humility, turning one's gaze outward, using our talents to serve their needs. Gustave even stands in contrast to his fellow expeditioners in this regard. Lune seeks to kill the Paintress because that's what she was born to do. That's the purpose her parents drilled into her from the age of 4. Maëlle simply wants to escape Lumiere, the home where she never felt welcome. Ciel lacks any real hope that their mission can succeed, but is otherwise the most similar to Gustave. Her focus on the well-being of her friends admirable and much needed in this harsh world, making her the game's premier example of our next virtue. Yes, Gustave, though compassionate in his own right, is surpassed in this trait by Ciel. That's okay. Our hero does not need to be the best at absolutely everything. In fact, it makes for a more interesting story if he is not. We might all rightly want our heroes to be like Uncle Iroh, but for one thing, that archetype is better used as a side character, and for another, the road to becoming such a man takes decades to traverse and is full of detours, dangers, and setbacks. And when Expedition 33's boat finally arrives on the beach, they encounter such a setback.
You're old. How did you survive the Gommage? Which expedition are you from? Fall back!
The game plays a mean trick on you here, forcing you to watch along with Gustave as his friends and companions are slaughtered, powerless to stop death after brutal death. Why won't he do something? Why won't he snap out of it? Gustave knew what price this venture of theirs would demand. Why has its realization rendered him catatonic? There's a rather complex answer to those questions, as multiple facets of Gustave's personality each have their own effect on him in this chaotic moment. For one thing, our hero has been established as the team's engineer and inventor. So while he obviously trained for combat, he wasn't expected to be a frontline brawler, certainly not immediately. Gustave is also not the best at thinking on his feet, preferring instead to carry out carefully laid plans. We see this as he stumbles through half sentences when talking with Sophie, contrasted against the powerful, moving speech that he wrote for Emma to deliver upon the expedition's departure. But above all, Gustave is frozen because of his personalistic attitude, his compassion. To again refer back to the prologue, Gustave was affected more than any other survivor whom we see. The loss of Sophie, despite its inevitability and the fact that they'd been broken up for 4 years, weighs heavily upon him. Now, when his friend and captain is struck down, Gustave experiences a similar immobilizing weight of grief. That might seem like a weakness, a character flaw, and Well, it is, but it is also what makes Gustave the great man that he is. The ability to love greatly cannot help but be accompanied by the capacity for great suffering. That is not a weakness. That is life, as it ought to be. Problems only arise when said compassion and the ensuing grief overwhelm our ability to act, as they do for Gustave here. The virtues are not traits that can be taken to the nth degree without consequence. Compassion is good and noble. I dare say we could all stand to imitate Gustave more in this regard, as human society depends on people being able to sympathize with and work to alleviate the sufferings of others. But it is far too easy to let those sufferings drive us to inaction, as we look at all the misery in the world made readily accessible by whatever device you're using to watch this video, and despair of ever affecting change. That is, unfortunately, where Gustave's compassion lands him. What are we to do when we have lost so many friends and loved ones, when our struggle seems hopeless, and we can no longer see the light at the end of the tunnel? As Uncle Iroh would say, if you just keep moving, you will come to a better place. We continue. Again, Gustave is not the best exemplar of this virtue in Expedition 33. That would be Lune, whose reappearance after the beach and its subsequent fallout saved Gustave's life, and whose passionate monologue reignites his desire to keep fighting.
You swore the oath. When one falls, we continue.
Yes, I know.
When one falls. When one falls. Not if. When. We knew not all of us would make it. But we continue. As long as even one of us stands, our fight is not over.
I appreciate that Clair Obscur gave its protagonist these moments of weakness when he gave up, despaired of their mission, and resolved to retrieve Maëlle and take her back home, paintress be damned. Despite being one of the oldest men in Lumiere, Gustave is only 32. He's a fully grown adult, but still quite young. Still lacking in general life experience, especially since he has lived the entirety of those 3 decades on an island insulated from the dangers that exist on this continent. The difference in reactions between Lune and Gustave goes to show the necessity of preparation. In order to persevere as we ought, it is crucial that we have anticipated the difficulties and trials that may come our way, and have adjusted our expectations accordingly. A side effect of Gustave's conviction was perhaps overconfidence. He truly believed in their team. One can hardly fault him for that, but his lack of preparation for things to go belly up the moment their feet touch sand is, shall we say, less than ideal. But he does continue. Not without help, not without encouragement, not without Lune using every ounce of her persuasive energy, but he perseveres nonetheless. They find Maëlle, are reunited with Ciel, and resolve to continue their fight, no matter the odds. I cannot emphasize enough how important that choice is. We have all failed in life, many times. Perhaps we have reached the point in some struggle where defeat feels inevitable, and that the only choice is to give up. Gentlemen, let me tell you something. That is a damnable lie. We always have a choice to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and get back to work. Like Gustave, we might need some help and encouragement from others in order to do so. Good. Rely on your friends, your family, those whom you love and trust, and who love and trust you. Remember the moments they lifted you up, and be prepared to do the same for them when the time comes. But more importantly, remember your purpose. Remember why you struggle. For Gustave, that purpose was simple, yet monumentally important.
We always said the future of Lumiere is more important than
Any individual life, yes.
Do you still believe that? Do you still believe that?
I hope I do.
Side note, the lives offered up for the future of Lumiere are all freely given. No expeditioner is forced to set sail. Not anymore, anyway. It's easy, when tragedy strikes, to let it consume your focus, allowing it to become your whole world. When you have lost so much, of course, you want to cling to whatever you have left. Gustave certainly felt that way, but in the end, he continued. And that is what matters. While we should acknowledge his weaknesses and his stumbles, our main takeaway must be that Gustave ultimately found the courage to persevere. The principal act of fortitude is endurance. That is, to stand immovable in the midst of dangers rather than to attack them. The city of Lumiere has endured for 67 years, standing broken yet whole in the midst of the ocean, living on as long as fate allows. Even in the face of their inevitable extinction, they persist. They dress in fine clothing to celebrate the gommage. They preserve their heritage through the arts. They continue to farm grapes and ferment them into wine because what else are you gonna do? And yes, they do in fact attempt to fight back against the evils that assail them, but that is not their primary purpose. Their primary purpose is instead to live. Why do I bring up the city as a whole? Well, if you listen to this game's soundtrack, which has been playing in the background of this video and my whole life since this game came out, you will notice that the melodies of the tracks Gustave and Lumiere are remarkably similar. So similar, in fact, that my 6-year-old was confused as to why the lady isn't singing when Gustave played as I drove him to soccer practice. Our hero and his hometown are inextricably linked. Gustave is an embodiment of Lumiere as it ought to be: dutiful, hopeful, persistent, and courageous. This adventure is not, as some Lumiereans think, an adrenaline-fueled hero's fantasy, but is, instead, at least for Gustave, a mission undertaken for the purest and most selfless of reasons: to allow his people to endure. Now, you might think that courage and perseverance are too closely linked to make them worthy of separate sections, and you wouldn't be totally wrong. As C.S. Lewis put it, courage is not simply one of the virtues, but the form of every virtue at the testing point. When we need to persevere despite difficulty, we need to find the internal fortitude to do so. But that is hardly the only situation when courage is needed. For example, when we are tempted to think of ourselves and our own wants and needs, we need to have the courage to show humility and compassion.
Things we don't understand. They just make us feel small and powerless. But it helps, you know, to focus on the things I do understand, on the people I care about and who care about me. And, you know, now I feel a little less lost, because at least we're lost together.
It is no minor thing to feel small and powerless. Our modern world, certainly in Western societies, emphasizes independence, self-actualization, self-reliance, and so forth. We want to be in control of our futures. We hate that there are innumerable forces affecting our lives that are beyond our control or even our comprehension. Such a reality can make us shut down, quivering in fear, or it can open our eyes to what we can control, what differences we can make in the lives of those around us. It takes great courage to make that choice, to acknowledge that we are small and weak, but that we will use what little strength we have for the sake of love. Why? Why bother mustering the courage to act when we have so little power to affect real change? To answer that question, we should ask another. What kind of courage has Gustave modeled since the very beginning? What was that brand of fortitude that he had to rediscover after the disaster on the beach? What kept him going, sweeping aside Nevron after Nevron as they marched ever onward toward the paintress? That, my dear friend, would be the courage to hope. What is hope, exactly? Well, that answer is going to depend on its source, so let us ask how Gustave would define it. I propose he would say something along the lines of, hope is the belief that the fight is worth fighting, even if you do not know how it will end, even if the outcome you desire seems impossibly out of reach. Or we could consult Professor Tolkien. No man can estimate what is really happening at the present subspecie aeternitatis. All we do know, and that to a large extent by direct experience, is that evil labors with vast power and perpetual success in vain, preparing always only the soil for unexpected good to sprout in. Does Gustave really believe that their expedition can take down the paintress? Well, yes, he does. Our hero is decidedly optimistic in addition to being hopeful, but let's make sure we understand the distinction. Optimism is the belief in oneself, one's own abilities, and in this case, those of one's team. It states quite clearly that the desired outcome will happen, or at least that it is highly likely to happen. Such an outlook is certainly hopeful, but does not cover the full extent of hope. Gustave certainly starts out as optimistic, but is he truly hopeful? As we've already seen, no, not fully. When his confident optimism about their mission is destroyed, his hope fades as well. And that's the thing about optimism. Its scope is limited. We are optimistic about specific events, certain plans and goals. We hope that our efforts in all of that, in all of life, will be worth the effort, even if we do not know how. That is the truer hope that Gustave discovers or rediscovers after reaching the continent. Yes, he absolutely recovers some optimism as well.
Am I one of those old people?
One day, I hope.
We really thought we were making a difference.
Hey, we're still making a difference.
Yes. Of course.
Yeah.
But there can be no doubt that our hero now understands that regardless of outcome, this fight of theirs is one in which they must persist, simply because it is the right thing to do, and he trusts that doing what is good and noble will bear unexpected fruit. The more obvious subtext of that second bit of conversation between Ciel and Gustave is that Ciel doesn't really expect anything will come of this journey of theirs. She's happy to be with friends and wants to support and comfort them as they progress inexorably toward one death or another, but actually killing the paintress? Yeah, that's a pipe dream. The less obvious subtext in that scene is Gustave's redefined hope. We're still making a difference, he assures her. Not will make a difference. Are, here, right now. Back in Lumiere, Gustave felt that the only measure of success, the only difference worth making was ultimate victory. Not so now. For one thing, they are continuing to lay the trail for those who come after, carrying on the grand tradition of the many thousands that have laid the trail for them. The remains of Expedition 33 are, in this moment, the ones who come after. And so to persevere in hope is the best thing, the only thing they can do to honor the memory of the thousands who had come before. But more importantly, the refusal to surrender and despair is making a difference in the hearts of the 4 expeditioners who remain. Perhaps we cannot change the world, but we can change ourselves. Perhaps the choices of Gustave and company will serve as an example to Expedition 32 and beyond, and perhaps no one will ever find their trail or read their journals. But it is worth living, as if your every decision matters, as if choosing courage, perseverance, and hope when choosing fear, apathy, and despair would be so much easier, will mean something. Does Gustave still believe they can take down the paintress? Yeah, I think he does. But he has enhanced that optimism with this fuller sense of hope, this unshakable confidence that his chosen battle is well worth fighting, if only because such courageous hope might serve as an example to those who come after. In that choice to persevere for the sake of the people whom he loves, to steel himself and believe once again that his conviction is not in vain, Gustave demonstrates our penultimate virtue. A precise definition of wisdom is hard to nail down, but you typically know it when you see it, or I guess, hear it.
I'm enjoying the uselessness of today and readying my usefulness for tomorrow.
Knowledge is not wisdom. Prudence is not wisdom. Compassion is not wisdom. Courage is not wisdom. And yet without wisdom, one's ability to live out those virtues is severely diminished. Wisdom, as Gustave demonstrates, is a combination of knowledge, insight, and right judgment. It is the capacity to assess a situation and determine the best course of action in accordance with one's principles and duties. It is the ability to adapt to changing circumstances and new knowledge and to guide others along their path.
That's the insidious thing about the gommage. It's predictable, almost gentle. It makes Lumiere complacent and accepting, but the gommage is equally violent than death. Death is just as final.
The wise man sees the world how it is, not how he wishes it to be, but he works for for that idyllic vision, accepting reality while seeking to change the course of the future. The wise man may stumble and fall, but he will have the humility to accept the hand which offers to lift him back up. The wise man will know when it is time to relax and when it is time to lock in. The wise man will know in any given moment whether to let his compassion or his perseverance take charge. As that last sentence demonstrates, Gustave is not always wise, but a man who has never failed is a man who has never learned anything, and thus not a man worthy of our time and attention. The question is, can you continue? Will this failure cause you to fall into depression and despair? Or will you take this opportunity to reflect, to grow, to become a better man than you have ever been?
We can't change what's done. We can only move on.
And move on, Gustave does. He finds the courage to persist, driven by the desire to honor the sacrifice of those who came before and the unwillingness to let those who still live suffer alone. Though their fight may seem impossible, he charges ahead with conviction, assured that in some unknowable way, this is a battle worth the cost, because he is fighting for those whom he loves. If I am courageous and persistent, but I do not have love, I am nothing. If I am humble and hopeful, but lack love, I am empty. If my cause is just and my judgment sound, but my love deficient, it is all for naught. I do not exaggerate when I say that every choice a man makes ought to be guided by love, by the pure and uncomplicated desire to seek the good of another. That is not to say a man should ignore his own well-being. Far from it. If we are not at our best, mentally, physically, and spiritually, how could we possibly give our best to others? A man is always asked to give himself totally and unconditionally in service to others. And there may come a time when that gift will be the highest, greatest, and last gift. But before we reach that fateful scene, let us reflect on the love shown by Gustave, especially his love for Maëlle, his adopted sister/daughter. This was a girl who never really knew her parents, who bounced from foster home to the orphanage and back again, who was never given a chance to prove her worth at any of Lumiere's prestigious apprenticeships, who could offer nothing to Gustave. But he took her in, because even if he did not yet know her, he loved her. He saw a girl struggling, alone, despondent, and he took pity on her. Pity is often perceived as a dirty word nowadays. We hate the idea of someone pitying us because we are a prideful and conceited people. But if you read The Lord of the Rings, you will find that the pity and mercy shown to Smeagol by Bilbo, then by Frodo, and then by Sam are ultimately what allow good to triumph over evil. Genuine, virtuous pity is not demeaning or humiliating, but is one of the greatest gifts a man can give. We ought not to take pity on others so we can feel high and mighty, but because we have compassion for them, because we wish to spare them from further suffering, or worse. In this, Gustave never wavered. His love for Maëlle remained constant throughout the story, even overriding his other virtues until he was able to restore his inner balance. Gustave protected Maëlle. He comforted and consoled her, advised and guided her, helped her navigate the same emotional maze he had only just escaped. It was a gift, given without hesitation or expectation of repayment. And on the stone wave cliffs, Gustave finds himself called upon to give that gift of love one last time. Run through, leading out, mechanical arm broken and useless at his feet, Gustave never wavers. His conviction, his courage, his hope, compassion, perseverance, humility, and wisdom are all evident in the last 6 words he will ever say.
For those who come after. Right?
This is the greatest love a man can give. It matters not that his sacrifice was not technically effective, as Maëlle's life was saved by someone else. What matters is that Gustave was motivated by pure, selfless, unconditional love. It's as simple as that. And his death was absolutely not in vain, as his example serves as a primary motivator for the rest of the 33s as they persist in their task.
For Gustave.
For all of them.
That is what good men do. They love. They order every one of their choices and actions toward the good of another. Gustave was such a a man. He faltered, certainly. He needed help and encouragement to keep going, but keep going he did, until he was called upon to give of himself one last time for those who come after. If we were all to imitate Gustave in his example, I dare say we would be great men indeed. Hello, thank you for watching. If you would like to follow my own attempts to write characters 1/10 as incredible as Gustave, join my Patreon to be updated as I kick off my own novel writing process. Or if you would really like to hear me talk more about Expedition 33, click this video on the screen now, but be warned, it's not as short as the title might imply. Thank you again, God bless, and I will see you in the next one.